Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
take a minute
Yeah.
for that to go into, go out to the stream. Check 1 2 1 2 2 2.
I can hear.
1 2 3 4. So you see me and you hear.
You're walking around. I'm trying to open my juice. What I want to do is turn it my...
1 2 3 4 5 6.
Got it. We've got audio.
So you got video and you got so we can just go back to the meeting.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's past 9:30 and we have quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the meeting may also be audibly. Please ensure that cell phones and electronic devices are turned to a non-audible function. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is an added motion, and that's carried over from the February 5th meeting respecting capital project funding from the Ward 2 Area Rating Capital Reserve.
Okay, and I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Collins, seconded by Vanderbeek. All in favor? That's carried. Declarations of interest. Anybody have a declaration? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 5th, 2018 meeting of the Public Works Committee. Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Marula. All in favor? Carried. Let's move on to delegation request. This is item 4.1 from Kevin Gonsi with the Golden Horseshoe Track and Field Council respecting an update on the Mohawk Sports Park. Moved by Jackson. Let me turn you on, do you? And it's all yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know Kevin well. I spoke to clerks. He'll come in at Public Works. I wasn't sure if it was a programming issue with regards to what would fall under recreation, so he'd be more suitable at the Healthy and Safe Communities Committee. But it's more from the new facility standpoint, the new $800,000 track and field at Mohawk that we opened last summer, and he just wants to come in and give an update on the facility, and mostly it's a good news story, so I will move that he be allowed to speak at a future meeting. Thank you.
Seconded by Mayor Eisenberger. All in favor? Carried. Item 5.1 and 5.2 are intersection control lists. May I have a motion to approve both of them? Moved by Jackson, seconded by Collins. All in favor? Carried. Item 5.3 are various minutes of keeping Hamilton clean. Can I have a motion to receive the minutes? Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Jackson. All in favor? Carried. Item 5.5 is Public Works Report respecting the 2017 Annual Drinking Water Report. Any questions or comments on it? 5.4, minutes of the Waste Management Advisory Committee. I just got back from vacation this morning, all right? So I'm a little jet-lagged. Dated May 22nd. I have a motion to receive the minutes. Moved by Jackson, seconded by Conley. All in favor? Carried. Item 0.5 is the Public Works Annual Drinking Water Report. Any questions or comments on it? Seeing none, I have a motion to receive the report. Moved by Vanderbeek, seconded by Whitehead. All in favor? Carried. Item 5.6 is the Public Works Report respecting the standardization of fleet equipment and parts. Whitehead, Councilor Whitehead.
Mr. Chair, when I first elected, these are issues I've raised over a period of time. Coming from the private sector, I can tell you that there was an organization of employees that were empowered to look at saving dollars, and one of the clear suggestions was to standardize equipment and standardize the parts list because, in fact, there was significant savings over the year. In fact, enough savings that each employee received $10,000 and the customer received $10,000. That's $20,000 per employee, 3,000 employees per the year. So that's just a clear indication that streamlining these processes and standardizing where you can the equipment and parts, there is in fact a savings. So I just want to echo that.
Okay, I see no other speakers, so I need a motion on the matter to receive it. Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Conley. All in favor? That's carried. Item 6.1 is the Public Works Report 1824 respecting the proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of the public unassumed alleyway abutting 193 East 22nd Street. Notice to the public of the proposed sale of the land has been given to as required under the city's bylaw number 1424, the sale of land policy bylaw. The clerk is advised that no individuals have registered to speak in their matter. Are there any members of the public who wish to come forward to speak to this matter? Seeing none, since there are no speakers, is there any questions or any discussion from the committee respecting the report? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve? Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Conley. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Move on now to 6.2 is public reports. 18025, respecting the proposed permanent closure and sale of a portion of the public unassumed alley abutting 102 Francis Street. Notice to the public of the proposed sale of land has been given as required under City Bylaw 1424, the Sale of Land Policy Bylaw. The clerk is advised that no individuals have registered to speak to this matter. Are there any members of the public who wish to come forward to speak on this matter? Sorry, Madam Clerk.
We've learned that the applicant has withdrawn the application, so I didn't put that in your chair's procedures, but this application has been withdrawn.
So we take no action on it then, or simply receive it?
We'll remove it from the agenda.
Do you need a motion to do that?
Yes, please.
Moved by Whitehead, seconded by Vanderbeek. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll now move on. There's no staff presentations. Item 8.1 is Public Works report respecting the waste management system development and waste processing contracts. I remind committee members that if there is any discussion on Appendix B to the report, we are required to move into closed session. So is there any discussion or any questions about the report and or confidential Appendix B to the report? Councillor Collins?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It sounds like it's a waiting game. So first, if I could just ask staff to summarize what's in the report here, and then I do have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Through the chair. So basically, the report outlines 3 of our contracts that are expiring or about to expire. I'll go forward with the most straightforward one. That's the operation of the city's transfer stations, recycling centers, and the landfill. That contract, there's 2 contracts, so there's 3 options, I guess. One is to operate a transfer station CRC. The second option is to operate the landfill, or option C is to operate both. So it just depends on pricing. We expect that contract will go out to tender or to RFP and issued on the street probably by the end of the month, over the next couple of weeks. So that one's relatively straightforward. The current contract expires at the end of February 2020 and will go out. The other 2 contracts, so one is for the material recycling facility, so that's where the city's blue box materials are managed. That contract expires March of 2020. We've been, based on council or committee approval, we entered negotiations with Canada Fibers Limited, who is the current contractor. We entered negotiations with them probably about last summer. We started. There has been definitely some back and forth. Unfortunately, to this point, we have not been able to come to an agreement in terms of the processing rate. And as part of the report, you will see that we are recommending that we come back to committee by mid-year and to give you an update on or a recommendation on how we should proceed. The last contract that's identified here is related to the operation of the city's composting facility down at 1579 Burlington Street. That contract is expiring at the end of 2020. We have, similar to the MRF contract, there are no other extensions available to us at this time. We are done. So we need to come to you to get approval for a potential extension. So similar to the MRF again, we started negotiations mid last year. We feel like we got a reasonable negotiation, and that's what we're putting forward at this time. Oh, just one other thing to add. There was one question earlier last year about any type of capital investment into the MRF or any of the other facilities as a result of the Waste Free Ontario Act. So in 2019, we have deferred or actually removed the work to do a study on potential alternative disposal facilities. So that's off the books, and we'll come back again mid-year this year to look at the potential life cycle replacement of the MRF. Again, there's some questions there as it relates to the Waste Free Ontario Act.
Councillor Collins?
Thanks, Emil, for a very detailed summary. My question was, and you just answered it, and it's in the report, of course, and I had asked in February to get a better understanding of how our capital budget then is impacted by the Waste Free Ontario Act. On the Waste Free Ontario Act, have we heard anything else from the province as it relates to timing or bits and pieces of their plan, or is this an issue that is really going to be determined by the provincial election later this year, and then, of course, whatever governing party is in place, they may have a different plan than the one that is proposed now? Or is the one that's on the table a certainty, and it's just a matter of implementation at this point?
Through the chair, I wish there was an easy answer to this, but I think what you mentioned at the end is closer to the mark in terms of the provincial election. Stewardship Ontario and the new authority, the RPRA, they were to submit a program plan to the minister February the 15th or mid-February. Unfortunately, they could not come up with a plan that that was fair or that worked for everybody, including municipalities who had a large amount of concern as to how this was being rolled out. So they did not submit anything to the minister. The rumblings are that it is likely that we will not have any firm direction, although there'll be ongoing discussions. It seems as though there will be no firm direction until after the election.
Okay. One last question, Emil, and thank you for those answers. What are other municipalities doing? They're obviously in the same boat that we're in terms of it's a waiting game, but are they temporarily extending contracts as is referenced in the report, and are they reinvestigating their short and medium-term plans for their capital assets and their capital budgets? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, it seems as though there's a couple of municipalities that are making some investment into their facilities, not necessarily large scale. In a MRF, large scale is talking millions, anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on what the need is. But that seems to be the direction that municipalities are going in. It is still, notwithstanding that there's this uncertainty, there's still a need to put some investment in. Again, some of the rumblings, and that's the best I have, unfortunately. It seems that before anything is really done, it sounds like it's probably 3 to 5 years off. So it really depends on the municipalities, MRF, whether it can wait that period of time.
That's great. Thanks for those answers, Emil, and Mr. Chairman, I'd be prepared to move the report at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead. You're next. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the same line of questioning, in the overall arching discussion, I'm thinking about when the housing market was, when the housing was downloaded and the infrastructure deficit, and there was no expectations on the status or the condition of those transfers of the province handed down. And that, same thing with the ambulance system. We inherited an ambulance system that with no capital or very little capital. So help me understand what our role is or any discussions in respect to that 4 or 5 year plan that you just identified. Is there any expectations in the state of our facility and in the order of any transfer that may take place?
Through the chair, no expectation has been identified by the province, but one of the key factors in all of these discussions, certainly from a municipal standpoint, is to address the issue of stranded assets. So stranded asset being if the city were to get out of the business and hand it over to the province, what the city or any municipality for that matter, what they would get, what would they recoup from their investment over the years and any of the equipment that happens, to your point, between now and 4 or 5 years down the road. So that although an expectation hasn't been identified per se what this equipment should look like, we as a city would still have to maintain a program between now and whenever that the program could potentially be handed over. So we need to ensure that the facility is operating efficiently.
So my understanding that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time I toured that facility, there was discussion about investment in the floor and some other areas that could be done, need be done. but it was also suggested to me that we can limp along. So the question is it an investment that we're required to make? Or is it a request that we can limp along until the potential transfer of the facility?
Through the chair, based at this point, we're at the point where we can limp along, to use your words. We'd only do any kind of capital that is absolutely necessary. If there's something critical, as you said, the floor, we have made some repairs on the flooring, but at this point, nothing more than that. Basically, it's things that are critical that we need to make sure that the facility is able to operate properly.
Appreciate that. I would hope that the minute that the conditions of transferring that come forward, that we're apprised of what the requirements are of the city.
Sure, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Councilor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emma, we spoke about the MRF, and we had some significant issues surrounding odor issues, and we had delayed this report until now because we had a short-term and long-term plan. Just for the public record, and so that my community and beyond understands where we are presently, and where we're headed, could you elaborate on the capital nature of that investment and how that will mitigate the odor issues accordingly?
Through the chair, just to clarify, we're talking about the composting facility and not the MRF. Okay.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so in terms of the composting facility, we commenced an odor trial late last year, and it's an ongoing process. With the weather, it has complicated things somewhat. However, we are continuing with that trial. And the intent or the purpose of the trial really is to determine whether the technology, the odor mitigation technology, is best suited for our needs. We anticipate that we'll get clarity on, again, whether it is the best solution probably in the next couple of months, 2 months. And based on that data, we will then look at putting in a full-scale system to mitigate those odors. In terms of potential cost, I'm not quite sure yet of the large-scale system, but I think we're looking between $500,000 and $1 million.
Excellent. So through you, Mr. Chairman, can we have, some sort of idea of when potentially it might be fully implemented, assuming that the pilot project data comes up concurring when and rationalizing that approach?
Through the chair, we would ideally like to have it for the summer period. That being said, I think that might be a challenge. We are trying to do other things to get prepared for that odor season, if you want to call it. But realistically, I think that the large-scale system or solution would probably be implemented later this year, roughly Q3, Q4.
Okay. And just along the same line of questioning as Councillor Collins regarding the provincial legislation surrounding the uploading of the recycling program, just so we understand what we're talking about through you, Mr. Chairman, is the fact that this is one opportunity for us to upload a service, which is very rare considering we're continually absorbing the download, and the importance of that from an operating savings. And just for a point of clarity, because the way it was explained, I don't think a lot of people understand that this is one of the only issues, I think, as a city that I can recall where they're going to take something that traditionally is run by the municipality and upload it to the provincial level. And through you, Mr. Chairman, that significant savings would be passed on to the taxpayer. Do we have a projected savings accordingly?
No.
Through the chair, the cost to operate our material recycling facility annually is, again, it's tonnage driven, but anywhere from $3 to $3.4 million. So that's one part of the savings. The other part of the savings is the collections cost, which is significantly more. It's probably $10 million plus. I apologize, I don't know the exact number, but I can certainly get that for you. But it's a significant savings, yes.
So technically, Mr. Chairman, we're looking at close to perhaps 1 or 2 points a percentage of tax savings, which is very rare. So it's something that we as a municipality should be moving forward accordingly. And I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Chairman, have we endorsed the legislation as a committee, as a committee, and by extension as a council locally?
Through the chair, I don't believe that as a council, you have endorsed this. We have been keeping council and committee up to date with everything that's been going on. But certainly from a staff level, we have, not just the city, but municipalities in general have been very much in favor of this extended producer responsibility and the potential transfer to the province. So it's been on certainly front and center for everyone. But that being said, municipalities want to make sure that the deal is fair and a good deal for municipalities as well.
So on that point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to serve notice that I will be bringing forward a motion for council to support and endorse the legislation as it's written. I'm going to work with ML on the wording of that motion, but I'll serve notice today accordingly. It is a rare occasion for us to actually be in a situation where the province actually wants to upload a service, and for that reason, I'll support that strongly and bring it forward accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. 3 quick questions, Emil. So if we approve this today, you're coming back to us no later than the end of June?
Through the chair, yes, as it relates to the material recycling facility.
Okay, second question. This has nothing whatsoever to do with changing and altering the 95% approval rating across our city and the level of standard of service that our constituents are getting. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, that's correct. There will be no service changes at all.
Terrific. And thirdly, are part of the negotiations in light of what the companies are going through with regards to the minimum wage increase? Is that part and parcel of it, Mr. Chairman, through you?
Through the chair, on the MRF contract, that is a consideration, yes.
Okay. Thanks so much. Thank you,
Just
Mr.
keep
Chairman.
your microphone on for a second. I'll turn you back on. Just hit it. You just take the chair, then Councillor Jackson.
Councillor Ferguson?
One question through you to Emil. The Waste Free Ontario Act, it's been suggested is being uploaded to the province. In fact, it's being transferred to the producers. Have I got that correct?
Through the chair, Emil, please.
Through the chair, it is in a way because the producers are paying for the program. So it's not as though the province is just now automatically doling out the money. It is going to be funded through the producers.
Okay, and the producers will pass it through to the consumer then, I suspect.
Emil?
Through the chair, that is a possibility.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that. So I don't think it's really being uplifted. It's being transferred to producer, which is being sent back down to our taxpayers through increased cost of purchasing whatever products are packaged or whatever. So I'll take the chair back then.
Back to you, Councillor Ferguson.
I think Councillor Collins, you wanted to move the report. Seconded by? Oh, sorry. So, Councillor Whitehead, did you want to speak also? You're first. Go ahead.
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, I just want to highlight the fact that this is a more progressive system because it's user pay. Right now, there's many very thrifty people with garbage that are paying for other people's delight, and I think this process in which we're embarking on will center the actual cost to the people driving the waste issue. Thank you.
I agree. Councillor Moore.
Just on that point of clarity, the province legislatively is uploading this responsibility from the municipality onto another level. Whether it's a transfer or an upload, there is a 2% tax savings to our taxpayer, which is very significant and very rare, and as a result, we should be endorsing it.
Absolutely, agree with you. Okay, so Councillor Collins, you want to move the motion now? Moved by, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Let's move on now to 8.2. And it's a report respecting changes to the transfer of review program with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Any discussions on that? Want to hear the summary? Would Gary, you can give the summary on this?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We've enjoyed a transfer review program or process with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change over the number of years where we do the design of the sewer or the water, and then we sign off and they accelerate a review and approval for us. They're changing the process a bit. They want to sign off in a more formal, rigorous process, and this this report is simply asking for our authorization for our general managers and to sign on not only this, but to make program changes with them on a go-forward basis.
Okay. Councilor Marulla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on this front, I know Dan and Gary, when working on the file with respect to the flooding issue and the surge group that was put together, and the very progressive, if not very progressive nature of that evolving over the last 15 years or 10 years, we've become leaders on that front. Yet, with respect to our process of assessing in our reports, we at one time used to incorporate the social, the environmental, and the financial benefits of any initiative or recommendation that was being brought forward. That was somehow omitted from our reporting system a few years back. But through you, Mr. Chairman, that doesn't mean that when making a decision, we're not taking into account the environmental, social, and financial benefits of whatever initiative we're pursuing. And I'm wondering, and I can't recall, so you have to refresh my memory, I can't recall why we omitted that component from our reports. And if perhaps someone can help me out, it would be greatly appreciated.
You, Mr. Chair, specifically the transfer review process, typically we're talking about infrastructure that either exists and is going to be altered or is, I would characterize as relatively straightforward. The triple bottom line analysis that you're talking about, we still do that on larger projects. For example, some of the big projects that are coming out of the wastewater treatment plant down at Woodward Avenue, the biosolids project, the tertiary, we still put a triple bottom line lens on that. As far as why it doesn't appear in the reports, I'm at a loss. I'd have to get back to you on that, but I would say that on the larger environmental initiatives, we still do that.
Well, and I'm well aware of that. I think, through you, Mr. Chairman, what would be important, though, is to maybe review through the clerk's department if we can reformat the reports accordingly, because I think it's important that we divide those three categories and emphasize the benefits along those lines. So at the appropriate time, or perhaps even through direction, if we can maybe have an understanding of why we omitted it and look at the feasibility of incorporating it again, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I see no more speakers, so motion then to approve item 8.2. Mr. Marulla, seconded by Whitehead. All in favor? It's carried. Let's move on to 9.1. Mayor Eisenberger, can you please introduce your motion respecting the future procurement of electric buses? Okay, Councilor Whitehead.
Sorry, well, it's his motion, so I wanted to speak to the motion, so you recognize...
You're up first, that's okay. If you're deferring...
Just call me back after...
Okay. I need you to press your button again, though.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. So on the last point, I think it was an issue of Vision 2020 not being reported on a regular basis, just on the reporting mechanism. I think that might have been the issue that we currently had in the reporting mechanism. So, notwithstanding, on this issue, I'm pleased to move, and Councillor Jackson's graciously seconded this to ask our staff to be directed to investigate the possible test in electric buses in preparation for any future procurement where feasible, and report back to the Public Works Committee. And if I could, Mr. Chair, just speak to that. It's probably high time that we have a consideration of what the technology is out there, and it's moving and progressing very quickly. I know that other municipalities are either using them or using electric vehicles, or at the very least testing them, and the battery technology is improving significantly, and of course we know that electric vehicle movement in our community is a great greenhouse gas reduction technique that will keep our environment more clean and green as we have all of these buses moving around. So I'm not suggesting that we go out and buy electric vehicles, but I am suggesting that we at least get an understanding of what's out there, what's available, how reliable is the technology, what's the additional cost, all the parameters around potential future procurement, so that we can ensure that it's a possibility, that it's cost effective, that it be cleaner and greener, All of those are possible with new electronic technology and, of course, the charging system and being able to use that going into the future as well. So there's much to do, but I think it's a good time to start to make sure that we're at least prepared for either the next round or the round after in terms of procurement. And given the recent announcement from our federal and provincial partners on significant transit additional funding over and above what we're doing this year, it's probably a good time for us to take a really serious look at what's the best technology out there, what's the cleanest, what's the greenest, and go down that road. So that's the essence of the motion, and prepared in concert with our staff, and I know that they're ready, willing, and able to dive in and keep an eye on that technology, investigate it a little more thoroughly. I know that they do, but I think this is now an opportunity for giving them direction to get a little bit more serious about what's out there and how we can utilize it. That's my motion. Thank you, and I certainly hope it gets support from the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
I certainly support the mayor's motion and initiative. I've been doing a lot of reading on this issue internationally, and I can tell you that obviously there's going to be some challenges in Hamilton. One is battery life, even with the latest in design, is winters. The battery holds the charge a lot less in the winter time. I actually went through that experience with a Tesla for 3-month trial, and can tell you that the distance was significantly reduced, well, about 25% reduction through the cold months. So that would be a challenge. We also have the escarpment, which would draw more power up and down. So we have some unique circumstances in Hamilton that may not make it somewhat less than ideal for the north-south routes, but doesn't mean it wouldn't be great where appropriate on east-west routes. So I certainly support it, but I also, maybe it'd be a separate motion. I've mentioned this before, and it's already already experimenting in San Francisco and LA and China, autonomous buses. And I would hope, and maybe I'll bring a motion forward. Maybe that's exactly what I'll do. I'll bring a motion forward to just put out there that the city of Hamilton would be welcome to be a pilot or test site for autonomous buses in the future. So that'd be a separate motion, Mr. Chair. So, it's not here yet, but I want to make sure that we put our dibs out to be a test site. But I think this is a great motion. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson, could you take a chair for 1 second?
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Well, thank you. And I had the opportunity to be in the sunny south last week, and it's getting a lot of media attention down there about driverless trucks. And there was an arrangement between Uber and Volvo to test these, and in fact they were testing them in Arizona. And I had the opportunity a couple of days later to drive from Phoenix to Palm Springs, and I came across a Volvo truck, and I got right up beside him and tried to swerve the car to get his attention, and tried to look through the window and tried to look through the sunroof, and I couldn't see a driver in there. And now maybe he was sitting in the bunker at the back, I don't know, but this truck was clearly driving itself. He was driving right down the middle of the road. He was driving the speed limit, he or she or it. And so I thought, I would hope our staff is staying current on all new technologies, whether it's battery-operated buses or driverless buses. In our case with driverless buses, you don't have, it's our single biggest cost center of operating a transit system is the operator. They don't call in sick. They don't have all these other issues. So we just need to stay current on this because it's beyond thinking about it in the U.S. They're doing it, and I saw it. And it's really interesting that this has emerged that quick and that far. And cold doesn't matter. I don't know what snow on the roads do, because I think they steer themselves by using the white lines with cameras that are on the vehicles. So there may be problems that way. But I think Tesla's already got vehicles that drive themselves. You still sit behind the wheel, but you don't necessarily have to steer it. So I don't think I need to put an amendment through, or if Councillor Whitehead wants to put through a motion through, I would be fine. But I would hope that our transit staff and our general manager are staying current on all these new technologies. I'm sure when they go to transit conferences, these issues are front and center in the would say the display booths that you see around, because it's coming and coming very, very quickly, and it would really be interesting to understand it more, to be able to be an alert leader on this type of new technology. So with that, I'll take the chair back.
Counselor, did you want an acknowledgement publicly from the director that she's taken it under advisement or not?
Well, that might be appropriate.
Okay. I'm in the chair, Counselor. Thank you.
Oh, Debbie,
Director, Debbie, please.
Are you following the autonomous or driverless buses technology?
Through the chair, yes, I am, and we are, as an organization. I had the pleasure last year to attend the UITP conference in Montreal, where they actually had the driverless shuttle-type bus on display, and was able to ride on it. So it is technology that's in its infancy as far as a transit application, but they do have them and are using them in the U.S. in very controlled environments, more like a shuttle service on a campus area. But we are staying up to date as to how that is being deployed in the transit.
They're being used in campuses where it's a very simple loop then?
Through the chair, that's correct. Based on the technology, the way it is a very defined area, so not out on the public streets as yet, but that's it is in its infancy as far as a public transit application.
Okay, because it was interesting what they do with the trucks. They send them down the interstates, the long hauls, but when they get close to the city, they pull into a rest area, and another driver, this truck, hooks onto that trailer, and that tractor hooks onto one to go back and circles around. And so they just stay on the interstates. They don't drive in the city. But this is, once again, very emerging, very new, and it's really exciting to try to follow.
Thank you,
With that,
Councillor. Thank you, Director. And I think it was implied in the Mayor's motion as well. But the Chair, back to you now. Councillor
Thanks for that
Ferguson.
opportunity,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So now go to Councillor Chad Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And just very briefly, I have no problem investigating, but I recall, it might have been earlier this year or last year, that I read a Star article that I think Windsor tested them, and the cost of testing was a substantial cost, and I don't think the city went through with it. So I just want to make sure that if there is any, it says possibly test, if there's a cost to that information comes back prior to doing it. The investigation part, in terms of all the research, I certainly have no issue with. But if there is a cost, if that could come back to council for consideration, that would be great. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Eisenberg.
Yeah, that's the intent, and if folks want to add, the automated vehicle portion to it, that's great. I mean, the more technologically advanced we need to be, I think the better off we'll be. But the whole idea was to have staff report back on all the variables, all the costs, so that we don't get into a situation where there's suddenly a testing cost that we're not aware of that's going to, kind of drive the whole process out of whack. But the reality is that if we want to get into that technology and we want to take advantage, then we may have to do some testing to ensure that it lives up to the billing. And so but staff will report back on all of that at the appropriate time.
Okay. I see no more speakers on this matter, so I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. We'll now move on to 9.2. Which is a motion regarding the Hamilton Cycling Committee, but I don't see any movers. Let me just double check my roadmap. You want to move this then?
Well, I just had the other motion, and it dovetails nicely with the motion we just passed. I wonder if I need to waive the rules and move this motion, and I'll just quickly read it. Whereas technology is advancing rapidly.
Why don't you go back under 9.4 then? I'll put you down for that item. We'll go through 9.2 and 9.3.
Okay, fair enough. Sure.
I'll call for any other motions in 9.4. So I need a motion then about the membership of the Hamilton Cycling Committee. Moved by Vanderbeek, second by Collins. Discussion on it. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Let's move on now to 9.3. And I see Councillor Farr is here, but looks like the motion is going to be moved by Councillor Marula and seconded by Councillor Collins. Do we need a motion to waive the rules in this, or is because it was circulated earlier, we're fine? So Councillor Farr is on the phone out in the lobby. So. You must be doing a live radio interview, yeah. So all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on now to 9.4. Proposed 9.4. Councillor Whitehead. Yes. All in favor? All in favor of waiving the rules? Opposed?
So, Mr. Chair, whereas technology is advancing rapidly for driverless buses, therefore be resolved that the City of Hamilton inform the Province of Ontario and the industry that we are prepared to be considered a test site for this emerging technology. So I think if it's going to test it, I want to be one of the test sites.
Don't you want to have staff report back on it also?
Well, this is just to put a pronouncement out to the province and that. I don't think we're there yet. I don't even think we need a report back. This is just saying, because at the end of the day, it's going to be directed for test sites by the province of Ontario. So this is just sending a message that we want to be in the loop to be one of those test sites.
Okay, I would support that with the similar motion that the mayor had on his, which is the staff investigate and report back also.
Sure, absolutely.
You'll add that?
Yep.
Is there a second? Or you had a motion in Councilor Marula. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. So let's move on now to 11.1. We now have an update from the General Manager of Public Works respecting items and matters of interest to the committee. Dan, you have any new business you'd like to share? It's on my roadmap. I think you requested this at agenda review. Yes, you did. Your representative did. Yeah, my very capable vice chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that. Yeah, just following on some of the things that I know is happening at Planning Committee is just to give an update on some of the things that are going on. So just as many of you know, we've just wanted to remind committee that Main Street West has been paved now, and things are looking in good shape. We were able to do both the eastbound and the westbound lanes. And also that the work that was carried out on the Sherman access is concluded now, as many of you know as well. We had some rock fall there that had to be repaired. In addition to that, we had the event down at the Spring Tide event down at Gage Park, which is the kind of the spring version of the horticulture program down at Gage Park, kind of complementary to the Mum Show, and that happened last week. Beyond that, don't have any more updates at this point, but I'll try to get in a better rhythm to be consistent with the things that are happening in Public Works that might be of profile for the committee.
Any questions of the General Manager? Just, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Right. Doug?
Thank you. I just have I need some clarity on something. When we do a shave and pave, how deep do we do? Is it just like a half an inch or an inch or what? What's the standard?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically what we want to do is remove all of the surface course. Most surface courses are about 40 millimeters deep. So we want to remove totally. We don't want to just get down to that interface. So typically a shave and pave is 50 millimeters deep, which is 2 inches.
Okay, so, 'cause I was told, and that's why I'm asking these questions, is that when you cut the old pavement off, if you don't get all the cracks that are in there, the cracks will just return within a year or two. And I'm not saying that happens. I've been told that, and I want clarification. Is that a fact? Or when we do we try to get all the cracks out before we shave and pave again?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's entirely correct. I mean, there's two types of cracking in the pavement. There's top-down cracking, which is usually from the loading and weather, climatic freeze-thaw conditions, and bottom-up cracking, which is more over the loading and the large repetitions. Shave and pave is meant to deal with the top-down cracking. If ideally you want to get it when that cracking is still in those upper layers. We don't always do that, but the shave and pave is meant as a holding strategy. You'll get another 5 to 7 years before you have to go in and redo the entire pavement. So it's much more economical than digging up the entire pavement depth, because most of our pavements, especially in arterials, could be as much as 140 to 160 millimeters deep. So taking that top 2 inches off does get a lot of the cracking, but it also deals with all of the settlements, the potholes, the utility cuts and those types of things to give you a uniform surface. Your cracks may come back, but you'll get a uniform riding surface.
Okay. And is there different types, and please, I'm trying to get information. Is there different types of asphalt that we use? Like, one was mentioned, Marshall asphalt. Does that make sense to you?
So the Marshall is a method of how you make the recipe, how you mix, and it's certain parameters. The other one is the super pave. We've been super paved for the last 10 years, and that's just a method to describe how you combine the wet asphalt cement with the dry ingredients, the granulars and whatnot, and the parameters that you test that against to ensure that you're getting the right mix. So the Marshall was the old method based on General Marshall, who built the airfields in the Second World War, and how the recipe that he put them together. The new Super Pave way of mixing deals with more of the performance. It allows you to make the right mix for the right application, rather than the old, this is a cake mix, this is how we make it, this is how we've made it for 20 years type of thing. So that's
So in your opinion, the super mix is a better way to go?
Well, it's how they do it in every state in the United States. It's across. It's how the Ministry of Transport for Ontario and New Brunswick and parts of Nova Scotia do it. It is a rather onerous type of mix, but or a method, but it allows you to pick so many different types. You're not over specifying, or which the old method, it was basically a side street mix and a highway mix, and it didn't allow you to pick the type, anything in between, which the Super Pave does.
I see. And just a general question too. When Dan was talking about the extra money we got to do extra roads and shave and pave and all that stuff, he said that not necessarily will be done this year or next year. In fact, he went into 2020 to get it done. So we're getting this extra money, which we hope we can get some of our roads fixed, but it don't necessarily mean it's going to be this year or next year or even the third year. Well, probably the third year, but he mentioned that. Is that a reality? Is that a truth?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think the $6.5 million. I mean, we're looking at trying to get those are more emergency funds to deal with arterials, to try and get those done right away. The $900,000 that is going to each of the individual wards, it will depend on how that wants to be spent. You know, if it's a minor sidewalk job or a very minor shave and pave, it may be an opportunity for later this year, depending on what else is in that area. If the councillor wants to apply it to a very major job that involves underground and utility relocations, then it may not be next year. But that will be dependent on their preference on how they want to spend that.
I'd really like to know what the plan is. I don't know if you have one yet, but I don't want to wait till August or September to find out what's going on. And there is roads in my area that I did tell them I wanted done, but I'd like to have somebody set up a meeting with me in my office to go through that, please, so I can tell the public, because I tend to tell the public one thing and it changes, and it looks like I don't know what's going on. So I really like to sit down with somebody to talk about the reality of it, if I could.
Okay, so you just take it offline with staff?
Yep, absolutely.
Dan?
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we were happy to do that. And if I may, just beg your indulgence here, I did have one more update that my comms officer just reminded me of there. So there's been a lot of questions, updates on HSR. So one of the key things that I wanted to point out, back in October when we were at the kind of the peak of the canceled service, we reached about 4.4% of our service was canceled, and that was kind of the worst moment that we saw. The week of March 4th, we were at 0.94, so we've seen a dramatic improvement in the rate of canceled service. We've hired a significant number of drivers over the last couple of months, and we intend to come back before committee in June to give you an update on the complement control policy that committee approved specifically for transit. In addition to that, we've got a number of products that are going to be rolled out over the next couple of months. One that's happening this week is something that whereby canceled service is going to be updated through our Twitter account 24/7. Currently, we're unable to do that. We can only do it when we have people manning the Twitter lines, but Dennis and his team have figured out a way to do that electronically behind the scenes. So that's going to provide much more timely updates to those folks who are using our service. Something called Bus Check and Wayside and on-street signs will also display up-to-minute information with respect to canceled service. So this is something we've been hearing from riders that tweeting it out once or twice a day doesn't help them if it was 3 or 4 hours ago. So we're going to be providing much more up-to-date information with canceled service. So we are starting to turn the corner pretty significantly with the canceled service and the way that we communicate with our riders. So that's all good news, and we're going to be providing a document later on today or tomorrow for committee that really talks about the plan and what's the latest information to share around transit.
Okay. Next we have Mayor Eisenberger.
Thank you, and I just wanted to compliment our staff and whoever the contractor is on the work they did on Main West. I mean, this was done quickly and efficiently, and it actually drives great. And even though we got a lot of complaints from folks that we tied up traffic for a little bit through the week, which you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, so we did, and I think it really got done in a really kind of quick kind of way, and I really appreciate that. I think it really made a huge difference out there. It was a mess, and it's less of a mess today, so that's great. The other road funding, I mean, I think it's always been clear right from the beginning that even though we put in additional capital dollars, that there's $56 million of road work already planned for this year. So clearly, we need a management plan in terms of how to roll it out, and whether we can get it all done this year is still an open question. But each councillor is going to be met with our staff to determine what in their area is a priority and how we can get to it when we can get to it. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to get on top of some more road work, which is very necessary. And I think it was a smart investment on behalf of the city to make that additional dollar amount into the budget. Last issue is how are we making out on potholes? So you know what, the weather's warmed up, and I know that we've had crews out there on a regular basis fixing whenever and wherever they can. So any update on that in terms of are we catching up? And is it, are we looking at, another, well, depending on what the weather's like, another wave of freeze-thaw would certainly not help, but are we getting on top of the potholes as it stands today?
Eddie?
Through the chair, yes, we're keeping up. And the nice thing, too, is with the weather turning the way it is, we're getting conditions such that we can start doing proper repairs, cutting out the potholes, and so that's helping quite a bit. And a number of the districts have started that.
Great. But I've also heard that there's different materials being kind of tested for either fill. So the cold patch is obviously has limited success, and then there was another material you were using, I think I saw in an email or otherwise. Can you describe that to me as well?
So during the winter conditions, through the chair, we're using 3 different products, or we had been using 3 different products this year. We use the cold patch, which you refer to. That's not our preferred because that's a temporary restoration. We've been using quite a bit of hot mix this winter because we've been running our Bagella and producing as much hot mix as we possibly can. And then the third product we've been using is it's kind of hard to describe, but it's a pail. It comes in pails. It's a little bit like silly putty, a material of that consistency. We've been using it this year, particularly on the heavy traffic areas, because it's been standing up to the heavy traffic. It's quite an expensive mastic, but we've had some success with it this year. And then just recently, we've also been trying out a new gadget on our shouldering boxes. So this is a technique to use on a road seam, very quick. Rather than having a series of potholes, we go along and do a kind of a long rectangular seam repair. So we've got that going. I think we just started last week with that as well. So we're trying all sorts of different products. We're always looking at new ways to do things.
The last one you mentioned, which is more expensive, I mean, I would assume that if we go back and forth on cold patch a number of times, that we know the cost of that comparison would, I think, maybe outstrip the cost of the more expensive, more durable material. So have you done an analysis on that?
It's definitely working very well in some areas. What we're finding in others is that the pothole patch is standing up, and then the asphalt around the patches is giving up the ghost. So it's definitely a good product in the right location. And we actually, some of our yards are starting to run out of the material, but
they're all, I mean, all of the patches are all temporary. So the intent is to go back and obviously do a more permanent fix given the condition of the road.
Through the chair, that is our preference. We won't be able to do it all because we've got a substantial amount. But to repair a pothole properly, you should be cutting it out, drying it out, applying the proper material in it before you put in the hot mix and tamp it down. So that's what you'll be seeing crews starting now.
Great, thank you, and thank all the crews that have been out there, I think day and night, getting on top of these potholes. It's certainly a topic of conversation we hear everywhere, and hopefully we'll hear less of that as the weather warms up, but congratulations to all those that got the work done, because it really is a lot of work out there, and they did a great job. Thank you.
Yep, just before we adjourn, I too have had the opportunity to travel through Maine West, and I just wanted to pass along thanks certainly to you, Mr. Chairman, because that project wasn't even on our radar screen, and of course we had that meeting where we didn't reach quorum, where we had a discussion, and within a couple of weeks we had the funding for that. So I think thanks should certainly flow to you, and obviously committee, council, and staff as well, but I know that you spearheaded that project, and it is resolved. We'll see how long the road lasts, but I think it should be mentioned that your leadership helped us through that problem.
Thank you, Councillor Collins, and I too would like to add what the mayor said, to congratulate the staff and the contractor. I didn't expect you were going to go 24 hours a day. That's tough to do in the winter, and because it's very dark and cold, but you certainly exceeded my expectations by doing that, and I think the public's expectations. I think the mayor was right. I got 2 emails about traffic, and my response was the same. Well, we got to get it fixed, and but they're very supportive after it was done. So I believe Associated, I should give a shout out to them because they were the contractor. And any idea how the costs come in? Probably Gary, you can answer that, or do you know the answer to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're in the neighborhood of between $800,000 and $900,000 right now.
So significantly under budget then.
Right.
Okay. Great work, thank you. So let's go on now to 11.2. which is the changes to the outstanding business list. Any questions on it? If not, a motion to approve. Jackson Conley, all in favor? And a motion to adjourn. Moved by It was a close vote, though, Jason. All in favor of adjournment? Carried. Make that as a mover as Collins and seconded by Vanderbeek. Thank you.